Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to another evening at Dunholm Camera Club on the YouTube channel. So I see that people was in nice and early today. Let's have a look who was in and around nice and early. Doesn't actually tell me when people are in, so I don't know how long or how early people got there, or whether indeed they brought the towel and just threw it on the chair. Anyway, Jill was there first. Graham H, good evening to you both. Good evening, Sue. Richard Fox was really early today. Good evening, Richard. What's everybody saying? Anything and nothing. Oh, Sue's got a cuppa, so she's all right for a short while until it goes cold. Who else is in? Scrolling down, there was a lot of conversation going on between you three or four there. Young Neil's in here, so I can see by the Dunholm Camera Club name there that our kicker outers there. Couldn't think what to call you there for a minute. Kicker outer. Evening, Avcam, Doreen, Michael Hudstone. Good evening to you. And Jan from a very snowy Glasgow. Blooming heck! I saw there was a great wave going across there from today till tomorrow. If they've had as much snow as we've had rain down here today, there'll be a good covering. So who else have we got? Paul. Oops, moved it up too fast. Good evening, Paul. Good evening, Diva, Caroline, and Dave. Welcome to you all. Jill Pardo. Good evening, Jill. Welcome to another talk this evening. Moving down, having a look. I'm trying to do a bit of reading at the same time, so yeah, it was. I must admit that the Zoom session went very well. We had roughly the same numbers as we get with a normal evening sort of thing, so it did teach me a thing or two as well, just to with reference to clicking buttons. So as we've said before, it's not the Zoom is not a medium that we're going to be using on a regular basis, but it is something that will make certain things a lot easier to get them out to come across to yourselves. So yeah, what else have we got? Good evening, Viv. Welcome to young Vivian. And Keith. Good evening, Keith. I think when it moves up quick, it's because somebody's just typed and I scroll at the same time and it shoots up a lot more than I want it to. 1 inch of rain is equivalent to a foot of snow. Well, they must have had some snow if it's snowed all day up there. Good evening, Bob. Good evening to one and all, he's saying. Trust everybody's keeping well. Yes, I'm okay. Good evening, Caroline O. No, you're not late. I don't think, Caroline. No, you've got a couple of minutes. You're early today. So, good evening, Mark. Mark's just popped in. So we're just nicely getting up the numbers now. There's 22 showing plus those who aren't. Can't remember or not whether I said good evening to the usuals. Crispine. And I'm thinking of, or trying to think of another name. Gromit. Good evening if you're watching. So, you know, that's bringing us up there to sort of about 22 to 24. So good evening one and all. So as you can see, this evening, you can't see yet, but you will in a few minutes. We have this evening with us a young gentleman who is going to give us all a little talk on his photography. And so his photography, from the look of that title up there, at least we're going to be starting off in Norway. Where we'll end, I'm not too sure, but it's certainly going to be a good evening anyway. I'll just look at these last one or two people that have put messages up before we go across to Jim. Good evening, Vera. That's Vera Holmes. Good evening to you. Welcome. Plenty of snow on the A9. Just looked at traffic camera. Why did you take a look at the traffic camera? Oh well, never mind. So yes, one final welcome to everyone, and I'm going to bring both Jim and myself into the picture now so that you can see us both. I have no notices this evening other than to say make sure that you are watching next week, because we have an excellent evening for you next week with the presentations, etc., and you will see the best of the images. So, you know, make sure that you join us. Tell your friends, family, those that sit on the roadside at night, just get them to get inside and watch, because it's going to be a good night. It's already taken me 3 days to put it together. Somebody else just popped in. Good evening, Steve. Steve just popped in. Oh, gone. Blooming heck, there. Things are happening now. Ray's just popped in, so good evening to you all. Right, without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Jim, and he can take it from here. And so over to you, Jim.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm glad a few people have turned up to listen, and I'm going to start off in Norway, and if there's sufficient time to carry on from there, I've got a few other different things to show you. But I thought tonight I would talk about a trip to Norway with pictures and some information about the places that I went to. So let's get stuck in. And as with all cruises with the wonderful Saga, we start off in Dover. And Tug does a merry job of pulling us out through the centre there. Otherwise, we've got a problem. And the people all stand and stare at the white cliffs of Dover. What you can't see there, and they've obviously just finished it, oh yes, there's one person, you're just helping yourself to some champagne to start the cruise with. Dover Castle overlooks the harbour and overlooks the English Channel. It's a very interesting place, actually. Not Dover town centre, there's nothing very special, but the castle in particular has been there since about the 11th century. And more recently, the Dunkirk evacuation was organised from there. There are tunnels deep down, some of which were used as a hospital, but later to organise different things. And then they were going to be used in the event of invasion as a means of hitting back at the enemy where people wouldn't know they were going to pop up from. And there's some even deeper that were going to be used in the event of nuclear war. What better, though, to start you on your way is a Spitfire flying over the White Cliffs of Dover. I particularly like this picture because the pylons in the back reminded me of the radar masts that were all the way along the south coast and very important during the Battle of Britain. So to have the two together seemed a good idea. I like this one, but not quite as much because I didn't manage to get any movement in the prop. But I think, not quite sure, I think the pilot is actually waving. and one further fly past with the prop just slightly moving um, before he disappeared. Quite a nice send off. I discovered actually that on this particular cruise, this guy was a friend of the captain's and they arranged it between them. So special for us, not every cruise gets it. So we've been all over the North Sea, and this is entering Norway with the, you can tell immediately with the mountains and the dark clouds. It's you do get quite a lot of that sort of weather. And this is the good ship Saga Sapphire, which is actually moored at Stavanger. So it all really kicks off from here. Quite difficult in some of these ports to get a ship of that size into one frame without making it look very peculiar. It actually holds a maximum of about 850 people, but usually travelled with about 650 to 700 to make it nice and comfortable. So Stavanger, Old Town, is a beautiful place. Stavanger itself is both a city and a municipality. It's the fourth largest city in Norway and was founded in 1125, the same year as the cathedral was completed. And in 2014, it had a population of about 130,754. I suppose not about, that was it. It's often referred to as the oil capital of Norway. Interestingly, at the moment, with the fall away of the importance of oil and the hardship creating in the oil market, most of the people have moved away from agriculture and getting good jobs in the oil industry. And now what appeared to be jobs for life is no longer. To walk round Old Town Stavanger. The Old Town comprises of 173 wooden buildings from the turn of the 18th century. They go along these nice cobbled streets. They were at one time going to be pulled down, but then it became a UNESCO site of importance. A couple of wealthy people bought into it and bought houses, and then of course it becomes the place to live, and now you'd be very lucky to pick one up. On one trip we made here, there was along one of these pathways, there was a TV chef outside his house producing cakes and things for the TV, and just as we got there they finished recording and we were asked to whether we would like some cake, which of course when you've been on a cruise you know just how much you've been eating and how much you really need another piece of cake, but nevertheless couldn't be rude and we obliged, and it was absolutely delicious. So this is the part where you start wandering back into the more modern part of Stavanger. Personally, I think the Old Town is the interesting bit and just around the harbour. I didn't manage to get a decent shot of the outside of the cathedral, but this is the Stavanger Cathedral, which, as I said earlier, was completed around 1125. It has had various updates since then. I seem to recognise this type of building, the ceiling, which you see in many cathedrals around Europe. And so we move on. So I thought you'd like to see a picture of the swimming pool, etc., that you have on the ship. Just down below, there's at this end, there's a little place where you can help yourself to ice cream, and that's very nice, comes with the cornets, and another one where you can help yourself to sweets, because once again, you obviously need more feeding up, but it's quite well sheltered down there. And the walkways, you can walk right away around the ship a few times and you've done a mile. So we are now in Bergen. And this is the view from the viewpoint on a mountain that I can't actually try to pronounce, but it's something, if you say it, Floyer, that'll do. To get up to the top, you go on the Fleurbanien Funicular Railway, which is quite good fun. You get up to the top, and sometimes when we're first up there, you wonder if you're actually going to see something, but then the cloud cleared a bit, and I've worked hard on this particular picture to enable a view. It's amazing all the way around places where you get these viewpoints on mountains above major centres, how often you get up to the top and you can see less than you did at the bottom. I had the same experience in Lucerne. Bergen is the second largest city after Oslo and has a population of 271,949. So they're not extremely large cities. It's surrounded by mountains and fields, notably Sonnefjord. The waterfront area, known as Bryggen, and this is part of Bryggen, has colourful wooden houses, now shops, on the old wharf. It was once a centre of the Hanseatic League's trading empire. This is the market on the left. Actually, you can see a restaurant, but that restaurant is on the edge of the fish market. And I did have a wander around there, and it's very, very tempting. Norway is very big on fish, especially cod. But you can see the mountain behind, which is the one you go up to the top for the viewpoint. This little bit of Stavanger is for Bergen, is very similar to Stavanger. Not quite so much of it, but much the same and built around the same time, the 18th century. You have to have a fountain with a statue of Edvard Grieg, who was born in Bergen June the 15th, 1843. There are quite a few statues of him dotted around the place. Funny things up on the screen. You have to have it's nice to see a British company doing well in foreign parts. You see these sightseeing buses hop on, hop off in many countries around the world, and it's good to see us doing well. I put this picture of a restaurant in to show the outdoor seating. Eating outdoors is incredibly expensive. Eating indoors is incredibly expensive in Norway.
Start the stream again, and it should hopefully carry on. You are on the screen as well, Jim. They wanted you leaving on, so...
Right, that's okay.
Yep.
I've got a thing inviting me to join on my screen.
Yeah, you're still showing, so you're still joined by looks of it, so you should be okay.
I'm just going to...
Click it anyway.
Escape and take that off.
Yeah, you've just gone back to your main screen now, Jim. You need to start to play your slideshow again.
I just took something off the screen that appeared. Okay,
right.
So not quite sure where we left you there, but I'll just repeat on this particular picture that this is the outside seating of a restaurant, and I just wondered how long those blankets would last if they were on outdoor seating in this country. Mark you, much of the time they are needed. These are just a few pictures from walking around. It's quite a pleasant city with lots of green space. Statues abound in Scandinavian countries generally, and Norway is no exception to that, as demonstrated. Briggen is a World Heritage Site, and this point is the oldest. The whole town of Briggen, which is part of Bergen, was actually destroyed by fire, totally reduced to ashes in 1702. These buildings are built on the old foundations. Narrow alleyways and overhanging galleries, a real step back in time. I think it was all these particular buildings were built literally just at the end of 1702 to about 1705. But they are now sort of boutique type shops, typical holiday type shops, and restaurants and things. Don't think the guy on the right there was impressed that he was in the shot. As you can see, very old buildings and very interesting, but perfectly okay inside. Cod is big in anywhere in Norway, and there's this massive statue of one, a sculpture of one, I suppose I should say. And that's the eldest building of the lot. Churches abound. You may get to see quite a few churches, some of them inside. I guess if you're big on fishing and offshore oil rigs where people are facing quite dangers at times, and also because they have these sort of 6 months of daylight and 6 months of continual dark in various places, religion is quite a big thing. This is St Mary's Church, which dates back to 1170, but was restored in 1860 and further restored in 2015. It is the oldest existing building in Bergen. This is a bit of fun. This is a human statue. This is one of those guys who sets himself up on a platform and stands there for ages standing absolutely perfectly still, and then suddenly scares the living daylights out of you as you walk past. But he was great fun, had a bit of fun with a few people, and but incredible the way he didn't even seem to blink. This is St John's Church, which only dates back to 1894, but it can hold 1,250 people. If you start adding up the number of people that can get into these churches, it's quite a bit of the population.
Could I just interrupt there, Jim, for a second? Jill Pardo's just asked, what time of the year was you there?
That's a good question. Actually, I've been in June and September. So I'm not quite sure when each of these individual pictures were taken because it's a mixture of two visits.
Right. Yep.
But I tend to steer clear of July and August.
Yep. Thank you.
I just like the building that this restaurant was in. It looks with the bit on the clock on top, the pink and the Dickens and all that, and it just appealed. And it's in a sort of square. There has to be a bandstand, just the same as in this country. But bandstands were very popular, and it stands in a nice area of green. And a fountain is in a park, which is just round the corner from where the bandstand was, not far away. It's not a vast area, so quite easy to walk round and very comfortable to do so. This is the reflection on the side of a large ship, one of those enormous things that holds about 6,000 people, and horrifies me. But there we are. People enjoy going on them, so good luck. But you may remember that I cut that down, and that didn't do too bad in a competition, as a reflection of the old part of Bergen. And a reminder of the oil industry that is so important. This is an oil rig tender. And so we move on, and this is Hardangerfield Bridge, a suspension bridge, which saves an awful long drive round. And they're very proud of it. I'll just go back there. I think you'll know I got that pretty much centre. I was quite pleased with that.
Hang on, I'll just get my ruler out and check for you.
Thank you. And these are just a couple of pictures of going along Hardangerfield to show you the type of scenery that you get. Steep-sided cliffs, and well, they are mountains, but steep-sided with a long drop, and the fields themselves are very deep. So just another one of that.
What is it on the island there, Jim?
That is a lighthouse.
Oh, right.
You get various little lighthouses as you go along, wherever there are obstructions. This is actually at. I wish I'd had better Norwegian, but this is at Hardangervidda Nature Centre, where they show how things have been done and the nature part of the area, and the buildings that the way the Norwegians always did live when it was basically agricultural. They would have grass and other bits and pieces growing on the roof, which not only provided insulation, but it also provided food for the goats, or the goats kept it nice and trim. Don't know what the goats thought about having to get up there. I'm sorry to say that in this centre was the only time I saw reindeer, and those reindeer haven't moved for an awful long time. So this is Vorin-Foss waterfall, which is well known and quite famous, but it's one of those that's extremely difficult to get a picture of. But we managed with fear and trepidation near the edge. This is Nygaardsbergen Glacier. You'll note at the bottom that there are some people standing there, which gives you some idea of scale. The blue in the glacier comes out actually when you've got dark, overcast skies. The lighter, when you've got lots of bright light, they do look white. At other times they can look quite blue, and the black on top is not sort of dust and dirt as such. It's the scraping of the mountain underneath it as it moves, gradually works its way to the top. It covers an enormous area, by the way, that glacier. This is the entrance to Skolden. Skolden is sort of split in half by the river that runs through it, which is just water driving off of the top of the mountains there, coming through the bridge, and it just looks very, very nice and picturesque. But you can't go anywhere without a troll, can you? A very jolly troll, that one. That was outside the shop, obviously. This is the Seven Sisters waterfall. I haven't shown a lot of it because it was running quite thin at the time, but it did manage to catch it at this point of time when it was giving off the rainbow effect, which I was very pleased at. It's a bit of extra dimension to a waterfall. And they literally do drop straight down. I mean, it is a very steep cliff. This is Geranger, which is at the end of the Geranger field. I tend to think of this as the picture postcard of Geranger. That was a different ship that we were on at that time, one of Fred Olsen's. And the interesting thing on here, apart from being a very nice place, sunk in the mountains the way it is the mechanism that they have for mooring. That where the ship is moored up to actually is powered by motors. It actually rests against the side, it goes completely away, and when the ship gets into position, two tugs position the boat in exactly the right place, and then a guy with all the controls hung round his neck stands on this thing and drives it out to the boat, which saves you having to be anchored off and getting in and out of small ships to land. Very clever piece of kit. So this is a waterfall, but it's on the way to the Brickstall Glacier. This waterfall is extremely powerful, and those people standing on the bridge are probably getting quite wet at that particular point of time because the amount of spray kicking about is immense. But you have to go over that bridge, so make sure you're wearing some waterproof clothing. And this is it as we're walking up towards, it's quite a steep climb, that roadway that you can see winds round from the top, then it goes over the bridge, and then it winds round again to see where I'm taking that from. And as you can see, difficult to take a sort of shot like this because wherever you point the camera, you're going to get different speeds of water. So not too bad a job. And this is the glacier itself. Now, there's a lake at the bottom of it, and as short time ago as 2009, you could practically reach that glacier from the edge, from being on a boat on that lake, canoes. Canoes used to go up to it, and sometimes people would just jump off and reach up to it. And that picture was taken in 2015, which shows you just how far glaciers are receding. Global warming, it's a real thing as far as places like this are concerned. This is just some field scenery again to remind you of how it is, and those. I sometimes think those grey skies actually, in some ways, make it more interesting because they add a bit of atmosphere to it. Although I would prefer to be in sunshine. And so we come to Trondheim, and we're parked at the gateway to the, as you can see, on the main entrance. Sorry, I should say more rather than park, shouldn't I? Trondheim dates back to the 11th century again. The main building in Trondheim is the Nidaros Cathedral, Now, that's not the greatest picture of a cathedral, but it's just, unless you have an extremely wide-angle lens, it's just not possible to get it all in. But it has a connection with Lincoln Cathedral, in that they both have what are known as Trondheim pillars. The pillars in Lincoln Cathedral are at the Western Cross, and it's I did check that with the people at Lincoln Cathedral, and they did confirm. Although I must admit, I didn't actually find the pillars concerned. Perhaps I'm just not knowledgeable enough to know when I'm looking at them. The Nidaros Cathedral is said to be built over the grave of Saint Olav, who is patron saint and eternal king of Norway. The wooden wharf houses are along the Nidelva River, and they date back to the days of the Hanseatic League again. Although today I think they're more like apartments, restaurants and so forth, rather than for goods. They do have modern buildings as well along the river, and this is the Radisson Hotel, a very modern glass and concrete job. I've also shown this because it's got lots of boats and somebody driving along in one. Boating is a very popular thing in Norway. They do have rather a lot of water in the fields, etc. So this is just a view of Trondheim as we went away. It's quite an industrial town, but it still has those wonderful mountains behind. And so we come to the Arctic Circle, because this globe is on the small islet of Vikingen. Amazingly, it does have, or Vikingen, it does have a name. The magic number for the Arctic Circle is 66 degrees 33 minutes. The virtual line shifts by 15 meters over the course of a year, as it depends on the angle of the Earth's axis compared to the plane of its orbit at the time. The globe is referred to as the Arctic Circle Monument, and that remains firmly in place, not moving the required 15 meters. But nevertheless, it's a sort of knowledge that you're making this momentous move into what should be ice cold. And this place that we visited this is the Svartisen Glacier, which covers an area of approximately 369 kilometers squared. It is Norway's second largest glacier after the Jostedal Glacier. It is actually Europe's lowest lying glacier, although there are several mountains in the region over 1,500 meters. It is just colossal. And so on to the Lofoten Islands, which lie off the northeast coast of Norway. We went there prepared with all big coat, as they would say in Yorkshire, because you're expecting to be up in the Arctic Circle and freezing cold, and it was 20 degrees centigrade, so quite warm. But that area, quite warm and very still while we were there, so it actually felt warm. But this is just a nice, peaceful view. I've never quite decided whether I should take that tree in the middle of it out or leave it, but it's part of the scenery, so I've left it.
Yep.
Along the trip, we were doing a coach trip there, having landed in Kirkenes, and just happened to see this little thing with the bridge. Might have done well in the bridge competition, etc. It was that was quite a few years ago I took that. This is the fishing village, and the concerned lady is the Lady Patricia, who was thinking, are you still with me? Where have you gone with that camera now? The houses at the back, at the end of this harbour, were originally fishermen's cottages, but they're now holiday homes. Although it is still very much a fishing port, and very pleasant to walk around. Some kittiwakes, a kittiwake family on the ledge there. Looks like the kids are making a bit of a row, but actually the adults are not concerned with all the people walking by just a few feet beneath them. As I said, cod is big in Norway, and especially so in the Lofoten Islands. For over 1,000 years, the islands have been a centre for the great cod fishing, especially during the winter when the cod migrate and gather in Lofoten to spawn. And they hang this part of the fish, which look like the heads, out to dry. Not the most inspiring sight, but a bit ghoulish, but interesting nevertheless. And this is just looking the other way, a picture which I rather like because of the reflections, the stillness, the mountains behind. I just think it's quite a pleasant view. As I said, the Norwegians, indeed Scandinavians in general, are big on sculpture. And this one was on a cliff when we passed. I wouldn't have liked to have been the person who went down and secured that, but it obviously has all the Viking connections. And as we were leaving harbour, I saw this church building over on a little way away, but I had the long lens on, and it's just very much a church of the area. Many of them have similarities and are normally wooden built. And as we're working our way along, a trawler, I was just bemused at the way the number of gulls it had picked up who were all looking for a cheap meal. This is just some scenery on our way to Hammerfest. It's quite nice just to drift along looking at all this beautiful scenery. And I was just taken by the way the light was reflecting on the wake at this particular time. It was sort of evening time. The sun is beginning to drift, but it wasn't the one I'm going to show you in a minute, but I just like the way the water picked up all the light. This is the midnight sun. We actually stayed up and stood at the aft of the boat and took this picture so we could say we have seen the midnight sun. And it really is, I mean, we talk about gold now, but you get a beautiful sunset. Well, it's not a sunset. You get the beautiful sun like that. And it's a real golden glow. There was another cruise ship not so very far away, and that got lost in the golden glow. There's nothing much, well, I didn't want to tidy up that particular picture because I just thought it shows why people talk about the midnight sun. But during the daytime, we were extremely lucky with the calmness of the water and the weather. while we were around this particular area. And so we are now at Hammerfest. I did tell you that churches might ring large in this, but there are lots of churches, and as I mentioned, they seem to be far more religious than we are, for example. This is a very modern architecture. It was actually built in 1961 in what they refer to as the long church style. It actually seats 525 people. Hammerfest itself this is the inside of the church. Very modern, very nice. Love those, I'm not sure you would call those chandeliers, but those and the way the organ was situated. And the person was playing a few little bits, practicing on the organ, and it sounded lovely. I would say that the wooden seats are no more comfortable than in an old-fashioned type church. Hammerfest is Norway's northernmost town. Although it doesn't look it, it is one of the oldest towns in Norway. And the reason why it doesn't look old is that in 1945, the Nazis gave the order that no building be left standing. So all you can see is built after World War II. This gas processing station is actually on the nearby island of Snøhvit. The harbour is busy, and because of various currents, it remains ice-free all year round. The large ship in the background is one of the Hurtigruten line, and their ships ply their trade up and down Norway, calling at all ports, delivering post, parcels, goods, and of course people. And they carry cars. And in this particular case, they were dumped whatever it was, and gone in about half an hour. But you can actually travel on the Hurtigruten ships, and you can get to see a lot of the smaller places, which absolutely none of the cruise ships could visit. It's a very busy little place, and fishing, as you can see by the trawlers there, is still the main occupation. Look up, you people. This is passing the North Cape Monument, which is situated about 1,000 feet above sea level and is the northernmost point of the European continent. You can take a trip to see it. The globe at the top there is the northernmost point. You can take a trip to see it, and hopefully live reindeer as well. However, it is frequently covered in cloud, and so you might just not see anything at all. This once again was taken at midnight on a day when the sun wasn't shining, but there were still people up there waving. Luckily, I had a long lens, otherwise you'd just see a few dots. And so on to Tromsø. This is taken from the viewing platform, which is reached by going up on a gondola trip. It gives an absolute superb view, and for once when we were up in the viewing platform, it was perfectly clear. As you can see, Tromsø is split in two, but joined by the bridge. The bridge is interesting. You can't quite see it from here, but the pedestrians are on one side. Bicycles and small motorbikes like mopeds and scooters are on the other side. And in the middle is the traffic. And there is still fencing to prevent pedestrians wandering into the road or bikes, etc., going into the main road. Once again, you can see the Saga ship in the left-hand side, but it's really worth a visit. It's a nice place. On about central, you towards the bottom, uh, or at least the island bit that's this side, you'll see a white structure, which is the Arctic Cathedral. The Arctic Cathedral is meant to represent a Sami tent. That's Sami. The Samis are the indigenous people of the area, and the white is meant to represent the iciness of a glacier. It has 11 triangles. I think you can see what I mean about the triangles. The triangles are described as being descending, but they always look to me, and I'm sure they do to you, as though they descend and then start to go up again. But it's a very modern take on how a cathedral should look. Inside, it's quite magnificent as a modern building. And the organ pipes almost seem to hang in midair, and that's some chandelier really. The organist is on the middle level there, and you can just see the lady who was giving us a few bars. Once again, the sound effect was good, so presumably the shape is good for music. And there you can see very clearly the 11 triangles, and some of the local housing. And you can see much better the bridge, and probably make out that you can see somebody who usefully is in red, walking up the left-hand side, and no, I can't quite see a bike on the right side, but and how the traffic is separated. And if you're energetic and into something very exciting, you can have a go at ski jumping. I don't know if anybody else follows ski jumping, but I like to watch that on during the winter. Unfortunately, this season has been cancelled. But of course, as we've just passed the Arctic Circle, you've got to have you've got to have a Norwegian Viking lunch. And believe it or not, this was just lunch. The guy on the left is the cruise director, who is a heck of a guy. And the guy on the right is the engineering officer, I believe, although I can't recognise him there. And they put on a spectacular show, which everybody takes photographs of first before they tuck in. So if you were feeling hungry beforehand, it's all there. As you can see, you don't starve. And of course, you get the ice sculpture. I was slightly bemused at the fact of the fruit there. I don't know whether that's the healthy option that you could have, but it's quite difficult to photograph this type of thing, given the light, and I didn't want to use flash with all the people standing around there. And these two ladies, if you're part of the dance troupe, you have to sing, dance, and then you have to help out on the tables when they have these special lunches and things. But they were lovely. And the guys in the back there, mainly Malaysian. We are now moored in a place called Mulder, and the next few are from the Romsdals Music Outdoor Museum. It consists of a collection of old traditional buildings. with about 35 houses, which showcase the area of Romsdalen building tradition and way of life from 1600 to 1900. And realistically, it didn't change that much during that period. The houses got a bit more, and they obviously got more glass in windows and so forth. But the basic methods of construction and what took place didn't change that much. That place seems to have a veritable forest on top. A nice carpentry, woodworking place with all the old tools. I think somebody does demonstrate that from time to time. And that's a picture of one of the old carpenters. So it was in the time of photography. And I guess inside the houses, it wasn't just the kitchen, it was a lounge and everything else. Must have been rather smoky when the cooking was going on. Moulder is well known for its jazz festival. We were there just a day too soon because they were putting out all the making up all the stage ready for the jazz festival. And it's also known as the city of, its nickname is in fact the City of Roses. Passing
What?
with the haze and so forth. But I did decide, having seen an oil rig like that, that it wasn't for me. When you think that sometimes the waves are probably coming up to the height of the first decking, no, thank you very much. And so a nice relaxing time on our way back in the sun, and farewell to Norway, which is a good place to stop for a moment, if that's okay.
Yeah, it is indeed. We actually had a little hiccup there because Zoom crashed as well, but it came straight back to you, and so we got you back fairly quickly, so that was okay. So yes, we'll break now for a little while. You've had some very nice comments as you've been going through about the pictures, Jim. People are enjoying the views, and especially when you was sailing through the hills there. So
Yes.
it were mountains, I should say. Not hills, are they?
Mountains.
Mountains, yeah. So yeah, you had very nice comments as we was going through, so that's great. Sorry folks when I knocked the microphone over. That was a little bit of just moving my hand, and it was top heavy and knocked it over, so sorry about that. Right, we'll break now and we'll come back. It's 53. Well, we'll come back at normal time, so come back at 10 past, ready for a quarter past start. Bob's just put a comment there, Jim. Nice ones, Jim. You were lucky with the weather. Vera's put, thank you, took me back to when I was there. So rightio folks, we'll see you shortly, and we'll come back at 10 past 8. So until 10 past 8, we shall see you then. So cheers for now.